Welcome to the deep dive. We take your sources, we break them down, and we pull out the insights you need to be genuinely well-informed. Today, we're looking at a source about a platform called Terra Nova. It's a really fascinating attempt to accelerate net zero targets.
It really is. And it forces you to ask this really critical question. Can climate tech actually be, poetic, profitable, and save the planet all at once?
Right.
Because the source material on Terra Nova, it's not just pitching a piece of software. It's presenting a pretty radical fusion of ideas.
Oh, exactly. We are diving into a model that basically slams together technologies that, usually live in completely different worlds. We're talking blockchain for integrity, AI for insights, even gamification for engagement.
And regenerative agriculture for the actual real-world carbon capture.
Yeah.
The big promise here, and this is what really sets the stakes for you as a learner, is that Terra Nova is aiming for a complete blueprint.
A blueprint for what? Exactly.
It claims this model can generate real, measurable environmental impact, create genuine value for communities, and, this is the crucial part, keep investors confident at the same time. If they can pull that off, it really transforms sustainability from just a cost you have to bear into a real economic engine.
Okay, so let's start there with that philosophical shift, because, we've been talking about climate tech and carbon offsets for years, decades, really.
That's a very long time.
And Terra Nova says it goes beyond simple offsetting. So what's the fundamental difference in their approach?
Well, traditional offsetting often feels very abstract, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
You pay some money, you get a number on a certificate, you just have to trust that somewhere out there something good happened.
Right, it's disconnected.
Totally. And the source argues that this lack of a tangible connection is why adoption so often fails. So Terra Nova is focused on building what they call an emotional infrastructure for sustainability.
Emotional infrastructure. I find that highly compelling. If you just see climate action as, a sacrifice or some abstract pain, people are going to resist it.
Of course.
So how does creating this emotional infrastructure actually work?
It's a mechanism that's designed to make you internalize the external benefit. It recognizes that a purely technical solution, like a super complicated carbon ledger, often fails. It just doesn't engage the people or the communities you need for big systemic change.
So the goal is to make every sustainable choice feel like a concrete gain.
Exactly. A reward or a point of pride, something you can feel, rather than just hitting some arbitrary corporate target.
That makes a lot of sense. So the target isn't just about balancing a spreadsheet. It's making sure every single action, every tree planted, every token earned, every change in the soil contributes to a carbon outcome that you can track, feel, and maybe even profit from.
Precisely. And if you're trying to understand modern climate tech, that shift from abstract goals to concrete incentivized participation, that's the critical difference, is how they're trying to bridge that gap between what people intend to do and what they actually keep doing over the long run.
Okay, let's move from the why to the how then, from the philosophy to the mechanics. Because the success of this whole emotional infrastructure idea, it really hinges on the integrity of the system underneath it all.
Absolutely.
And this is where that tech fusion gets pretty technical. So let's try to break down their tech stack into maybe 3 layers: integrity, incentive, and intelligence.
That's a great way to frame it, actually. It really highlights how each piece of tech is there to solve a very specific problem. So let's start with integrity. The biggest historical failing of the carbon market has always been trust. Fraud, double counting, all of that.
And this is where blockchain comes in?
This is exactly where it comes in. The core mechanism is what they call the Blockchain Verified Carbon Compensation Certificate, or TNCCC.
Okay, so for you listening, why do we need the complexity of a blockchain here? Why can't a simple centralized database just handle these certificates?
Well, that's the critical challenge they're addressing. Centralized registries have been hit by scandal after scandal.
We've seen the stories about bogus credits.
Exactly. So the source emphasizes that putting these TNCCCs on an immutable ledger, a blockchain, removes that single point of failure. It allows for instant, transparent verification by anyone. So you should think of the TNCCC not just as a certificate, but more like a digital ownership deed to a verified unit of carbon capture.
Okay, so the deed's origin and its existence are established. But what about enforcement? How do you stop someone from secretly selling that same deed 3 different times?
And that's the job of the smart contracts. They're the automation layer. A smart contract is basically a digital vending machine. When you meet certain conditions, the transaction just executes automatically. No middleman.
Right.
In Terra Nova's system, these contracts are specifically programmed to manage and automate the retirement of the credits.
So once a company uses a TNCCC to compensate for its footprint, the smart contract just instantly locks it or retires it on the blockchain so it can't ever be used again.
Exactly. It eliminates double counting through these automated self-enforcing rules. You don't need to rely on intermittent audits where, fraud can slip in. The integrity is baked right into the code.
That covers integrity. So let's move to the second layer, incentive. Like we said, this whole framework needs people to participate, especially the farmers doing the actual regenerative agriculture.
Wow.
How does the system keep them engaged and, well, rewarded?
This is where the gamification part comes into play, using Terra Nova's Crypto LogiE tokens. This basically turns the abstract act of, say, improving your soil health into a rewarding economic feedback loop. You literally earn value for doing the right thing for the environment.
Okay, but anytime you hear crypto and reward in the same sentence, the first thing people think of is volatility. If I'm a farmer and I pour my time and effort into my land, and my reward token suddenly loses 80% of its value overnight, well, the incentive just collapses. How does the source deal with that risk?
And that is the pivotal detail that the source really stresses. The LogiE tokens are specifically identified as stablecoins.
Ah, okay.
They aren't speculative assets like Bitcoin. They're pegged to a stable reserve. Now, the source doesn't detail the exact peg. It could be the US dollar or a basket of carbon assets. But the crucial point is that stability. It removes the financial risk for the participants.
So the stability is really the genius of the incentive structure. You're getting rewarded in a reliable, predictable way for doing consistent ecological work.
Yes. That maintains the confidence you need for long-term behavior change in these communities.
It creates a predictable cash flow.
A predictable cash flow that's directly linked to ecological performance. And that stability is what allows the system to do what they call direct benefit distribution. It ensures the money from companies buying the TNCCCs flows straight to the farmers and carbon capture is on the ground. It links a high-tech sale directly to a community's payroll.
Okay, so that brings us to our third layer, intelligence. All this activity, all the changes in the soil, the tokens being distributed, the tracking, it must generate an immense amount of data.
A huge amount.
And you can't manage what you don't measure. So this must be where the AI comes in.
AI is the indispensable intelligence layer, yes.
Yeah.
And its role is really twofold. First, it's about delivering real-time carbon insights based on sensor data that's flowing in from the regenerative ag projects.
Okay, and the second part?
The second, and maybe more important role, is predictive planning.
Predictive planning, meaning what exactly?
It means modeling. So instead of waiting, say, 6 months to measure how the soil has changed, the AI can analyze current activity rainfall, what inputs are being used, farming techniques, and it can predict future carbon sequestration rates.
Oh, wow.
It allows the project managers to make course corrections immediately to optimize the environmental yield in real time.
This all sounds incredibly integrated, but let's, pause for a moment and inject a bit of skepticism, which is what a deep dive demands.
Of course.
We've layered complexity on top of complexity here. We have blockchain, smart contracts, stablecoins, AI. Where does the source suggest the real risks are?
The primary risk, and this is something that often plagues these kinds of models, is the reliance on the data that you're feeding the AI. AI predictions are only as good as the data they consume. So if the on-the-ground sensor data from the farms is flawed, or if data capture is inconsistent across different regions,
then the predictive models will fail. The whole system's intelligence is only as reliable as its weakest link, its most remote sensor.
Precisely. And the other big challenge is it's foundational. It's the regenerative agriculture itself.
Right, that's the engine for the whole system.
It is. Regenerative agriculture is a proven way to turn soil into a climate ally, pulling carbon out of the atmosphere. But scaling it is slow.
Yeah.
It's resource intensive, and it completely relies on getting landowners to buy in. And the source implicitly acknowledges that this is a multi-year proposition, not some overnight fix. The tech fusion is really there to manage the financial incentives and the integrity during that long transition to make the wait economically viable for the farmers.
So let's look at the anticipated results. We have the philosophy and we have the elaborate how, but the proof in climate tech is always in the measured impact. Did Terra Nova just make some projections, or did they actually establish a proper baseline first?
No, they established a rigorous baseline. The source highlights that before they even started implementation, they did serious carbon accounting using the very well-established greenhouse gas protocol, the GHG protocol.
Okay, and using the GHG protocol adds some serious weight to their numbers.
It does. It means they're not just using some internal metric. They're using an internationally recognized standard to calculate their emissions reductions.
So, assuming the community commitment stays strong and the tech works as designed, what do these verified predictions look like? What are the hard numbers from the source?
The anticipated targets are quite aggressive. They're projecting a 47% overall emission reduction across their initial sectors.
47%, that's a big number.
It is, but the source provides even more specific metrics than that.
Give us the specifics, the ones that are likely to stick with you.
Okay, the most specific metric they cited was an anticipated 48% drop in flare emissions.
Wow.
Yeah, and flare emissions are, highly visible, they're relatively easy to measure, and they are a huge source of pollution in industries like energy. So to get nearly a 50% drop in that one category, that really validates the efficiency of their model.
That's massive. What about at the community level? For the farmers earning those stablecoins, did the source break down the performance there?
It did, and this ties right back to the incentive layer we were talking about. In those localized high-engagement communities, the performance is anticipated to be even better, reductions exceeding 50% in some specific sectors.
So there's a direct correlation.
It seems so. It suggests that providing that direct financial benefit and those tangible rewards, it really drives the maximum local impact. It basically proves that emotional infrastructure concept in practice.
So what does all of this mean for the bigger picture? I mean, the results align with global climate targets, but what's the foundational claim that this success would validate?
The profitable conclusion here is that this model moves beyond the old zero-sum game of sustainability. It demonstrates that sustainability can be both scalable and profitable. If you can deploy a system that uses integrity, the blockchain, to attract capital and uses incentives, the stablecoins, to drive community adoption, then scaling becomes exponentially easier.
Because you've created an economic flywheel, not a cost center.
You've got it, a flywheel.
So if we zoom back out for you, the listener, we started this by acknowledging that a lot of climate solutions feel, abstract or inaccessible. What Terra Nova seems to offer is the antidote to that feeling.
It offers tangibility. That's the key word. You can see the blockchain certificate, you can earn the reliable stablecoin, you can measure the soil regeneration, and it's all linked together by the AI. It takes the problem out of the realm of some distant policy debate and puts it into an economic, measurable, and incentivized structure that benefits everyone, from the big investor right down to the individual farmer.
So it's not just about creating less environmental harm?
No, it's about systemic change. It's moving beyond just reduction and focusing on creating systems that regenerate, reward, and resonate. The real innovation here is proving that a climate solution can be regenerative for the environment, rewarding for the people doing the work, and robust enough to resonate with investors who demand integrity.
This has been a really comprehensive deep dive. We've seen how blockchain, AI, and regenerative agriculture can merge to create a measurable and economically viable climate solution. We've separated the technical claims from the underlying risks and really tried to understand the unique philosophy driving it all.
And what stands out as maybe the biggest area of future debate, which is something we'll leave you to mull over, it concerns the very foundation of this model, credit integrity. The source material mentioned that the next layer they want to explore is how blockchain and smart contracts fundamentally revolutionize the trust and integrity of carbon credits. And that's the critical, often debated future for you to consider, because as this integrity layer scales internationally, it could potentially set the global standard for how we verify net zero achievement.
That is a powerful thought to end on. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the fusion of climate technology and decentralized systems.
See you next time.